The Boston Bruins had a down year. Nobody's arguing that, but David Pastrnak did not get nearly enough love in Hart Trophy voting.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Friday, June 13th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And if you put money down on David Pastrnak winning the Hart Trophy this season, you are sadly out of luck. He finished outside of the top 10 in voting, if you can believe that. And on today's episode, we are going to discuss where he finished and why, and also take a look at the latest mock NHL draft from The Athletic, where the Bruins, again, picking number 7th overall. We'll see who they have on the board for the Bruins at that spot. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I have been covering this team for various outlets for about 20 years now. So on Thursday, it was announced that Connor Hellebuyck, goaltender for the Winnipeg Jets, was named NHL MVP with a total of 1,346 points in the voting, finishing ahead of second place Leon Draisaitl in a fairly close vote. He had 1,209 points. Hellebuyck got 81 first-place votes compared to only 53 for Draisaitl. And this voting is done by the members of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. When it comes to our boy David Pastrnak, he finished, and quite frankly, so much lower than he should have in this voting. He came in 11th in Hart Trophy voting, if you can believe it. These are the names that were ahead of David Pastrnak. You had Hellebuyck, Draisaitl, like I mentioned. Nikita Kucherov finished third, just 1 point ahead of Nathan MacKinnon. Jack Eichel of the Vegas Golden Knights rounding out the top 5, and he was well down the list, getting only 2 first-place votes. Then you had Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche, Zach Werenski in Columbus, Alex Ovechkin, Nick Suzuki, Connor McDavid. They both tied with 26 points apiece. And then you had David Pastrnak in 11th, 1 second-place vote, 2 fourth-place votes, and 11 fifth-place votes for a total of 24 points in the voting. Just unreal that he finished that low in the voting. Again, these votes are conducted by the Professional Hockey Writers Association, and the Hart Memorial Trophy is given to the player deemed most valuable to his team in the NHL. Certainly, Hellebuyck, who won also the Vezina Trophy as the league's best goalie, nobody can argue that he wasn't super valuable to the Winnipeg Jets. Leon Draisaitl had an amazing season, as did Nikita Kucherov. But David Pastrnak had an especially fabulous season for the Boston Bruins. And we'll get into why he should have gotten more love. But the reality is, while it's an individual award, team success obviously comes into play as well. And the main reason why David Pastrnak did not get more love when it comes to Hart Trophy voting is because, of course, the Bruins were dreadful this season and finished with the 5th worst record in the National Hockey League. You look at Hellebuck, the Jets, won the President's Trophy. The Edmonton Oilers, Leon Draisaitl, are in the Stanley Cup final. All playoff teams when it comes to Colorado. Zach Werenski finished ahead of Pastrnak, but all the other players in the top 10 were playoff teams. And the fact that the Bruins were 5th worst and behind the Columbus Blue Jackets certainly played a factor here. But the reality is, David Pastrnak, without David Pastrnak, the Boston Bruins would have been barely able to beat an AHL team this past season. You look at the standings and you take Pastrnak off, you think, well, how much worse could they have gotten? And that's largely where Hart Trophy voters would have looked. You take Pastrnak off the 5th worst team in the NHL, maybe they drop to worst. If you take Draisaitl or other players off the list, maybe their teams don't even make the playoffs. But this is where it gets tricky because other players on this list have a lot more support than did David Pastrnak. But the main reason, and make no mistake, probably the only reason why he did not get more Hart Trophy love is because the Boston Bruins did not make the playoffs, even though the Hart Trophy is awarded to the most valuable player to his team, not to a playoff team, but to his team. And you can make a real argument that David Pastrnak was indeed incredibly valuable to his team. And we'll take a look at some of the numbers here coming up in a moment. Plus, he did not have the same support that other players did. You look at Nikita Kucherov. Hellebuck, of course, is in a league of his own because he's a goaltender. But you look at Leon Draisaitl at Edmonton. They have Connor McDavid and Evan Bouchard, among others. You had Nikita Kucherov. They have Brandon Hagel, Braden Point, Victor Hedman, among others. Nathan McKinnon, you have both him and Cale Makar in MVP conversations. Jack Eichel had arguably the least favorable quality of teammates among this other list, as did Zach Werenski. But Alex Ovechkin had a ton of talent around him. Nick Suzuki with Cole Caulfield. David Pastrnak was able to elevate a player like Morgan Geekie to 33-goal status, a career season. He's going to make bank this summer. The supporting cast was completely depleted around David Pastrnak, especially late in the season when he had some of the most productive games of the campaign. He had a pretty slow start to this season, and he still was able to finish with over 100 points, 43 goals, 63 assists for 106 total points. And what makes his performance even more special is how he performed at 5-on-5. And we'll discuss that aspect of his success here as the podcast continues. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-offs and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. And of course, it's not just for the NBA. You can look at their Stanley Cup playoff bet selections as well. Put $5 down on Leon Draisaitl to score in Game 5. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Everydayers know that the best way to stay on top of things is to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Each new episode automatically added to your feeds for you to download, listen, watch, and enjoy. Now, while David Pastrnak did not finish in the top 10 in Hart Trophy voting, he did get some love in the form of a second team All-Star selection. The first team is made up of Nathan MacKinnon, Leon Draisaitl. Hold on, where are the teams here? The first All-Star team, again, Kyle Connor, Nathan MacKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, Cale Makar, Zach Werenski, and Connor Hellebuck. The second team consisted of Brandon Hagel, Leon Draisaitl, David Pastrnak, Victor Hedman, Quinn Hughes, and Andrei Vasilevsky. Now, it's a good honor, and voting for All-Star teams conducted among representatives of the PHWA, once again, at the conclusion of the regular season. And it is an honor for our boy, David Pastrnak, to be selected. He finished second in voting among right wingers, along with Nikita Kucherov, who got the nod on the first team. And one area that I think sets Pastrnak apart this season is 5-on-5 scoring. We all know the Boston Bruins were pretty bad on the power play this year, and that kept Pasternak's overall numbers down. He still had 43 goals. He still had 63 assists for 106 points, which is not up to his career highs, but still a fantastic result, especially for a team that was so in flux this season. He finished in a tie for third with Leon Draisaitl with 106 points. You'd look at everything the Bruins went through this year: slow start, Jim Montgomery being fired, Jeremy Swayman not playing up to par, injuries to Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy, the trade deadline purge of the roster, and Pastrnak was still able to lead the NHL in goals at 5-on-5 with 25. He had the most primary assists at 5-on-5 as well with 30. And he had the most total points at 5-on-5 in the NHL. You look at how bad Boston's power play was this past season, and you think, wow, imagine what David Pastrnak could have accomplished with a full complement of teammates and a power play that was actually even average. He could have smashed his previous career highs in at least points, maybe not goals, which was 60, but still, you know what I mean? He would have had a fantastic season. And the guys who finished ahead of him, the skaters anyways, he had more points 5-on-5 than anybody in the NHL. And that, again, is especially impressive considering he spent the majority of the year playing with Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie. No disrespect to those guys, but not the same level of line mate that Nikita Kucherov, Brandon Hagel have in Tampa Bay. Sidney Crosby was 10 points behind. That's fairly impressive as well. And in Hart Trophy voting, he did not get really any love because the Pittsburgh Penguins were so bad this season. So it's, I guess, somewhat of a compliment that Pastrnak got any votes at all, considering how bad the Bruins were this season. And most of the players, actually, sorry, Crosby got one fifth place vote in the Hart Trophy voting, putting him like 19th or in a tie for 18th with the likes of Jesper Bratt, Philip Gustafsson, Jack Hughes, Darcy Kemper, William Nylander, Robert Thomas, Brady Tkachuk, and Andrei Vasilevsky. But Pastrnak had, again, the most points in the NHL this season at 5-on-5. He had the most primary assists at 5-on-5 in the NHL this season, and Morgan Geekie certainly was the beneficiary of that. He had 30 primary assists. Nikita Kucherov, Crosby, McKinnon, McDavid tied with 23, so each with 7 fewer than Pastrnak. And when it comes to goals, again, he led the way with 25. That to me is the most impressive thing about David Pastrnak's season and should have given him some more love as a Hart Trophy candidate. Yes, he was kept down because the Bruins were so bad, and you look at most valuable to your team. If the Bruins had, certainly if they had made the playoffs, he would have been there. If they were able to scratch and claw to a playoff spot, despite all the troubles, all the struggles and transitions, incorporating all these new guys into the lineup, etc. If they were able to make the playoffs, he'd be a finalist at the very least. The fact that he was still able to put up that production with everything that the Bruins struggled with this season, with the mass exodus at the trade deadline, with them playing very poor defensively. I mean, I don't know how you can look at what he did this season and not deem him more valuable to his team than players who have much more support around them. You look at the Boston Bruins scoring this season and how well David Pastrnak performed with 106 points in a full 82 games. The next closest Bruin in terms of scoring this season was Morgan Geekie, who had 49 fewer points than David Pastrnak. Yeah, Brad Marchand had a decent season as well. He's gone. The final standings or the final points, Pastrnak at 106, Geekie at 57, Elias Lindholm, Zaka at 47. David Pastrnak, if he did not score a goal for the Bruins this season, he still would have led the team in total points. That's how good he was. And I understand not making the playoffs. I understand, a drop off without him in the lineup. They go from 5th worst to probably worst in the NHL. So it's a slim difference there. But I expect him to have another monster season, health permitting. And if the Bruins are able to get back in playoff contention, then he too should rise. And it was nice to see him get the nod as a second team All-Star. One of the best, if not the best, right winger in the NHL, right up there with Nikita Kucherov. But I think he should have gotten at least a couple first place votes. And I don't have a vote. He would have certainly been top 3 at least for me. Especially because of his 5-on-5 production. All right, let's pivot to some draft talk. There was a new mock draft released today or the other day by The Athletic, and this was done by a combination of their experts as well as those who cover the teams. And we'll discuss who they have going at 7th this time here as the podcast continues. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You just realized your business needed to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? It's easy. All you have to do is use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot myself. You need to find someone ASAP. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. Indeed's sponsored jobs come in so handy, making sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply, but if you are hiring, Indeed is all you need. The NHL entry draft is fast approaching, and of course, the Bruins will be on the board with the 7th overall pick. I wanted to point out a couple of mock drafts, actually. One came just a couple days ago from The Athletic, and this was looking at Scott Wheeler, Corey Pronman, as well as the entire staff over at The Athletic making the selections. Not a ton of surprises here. They had Matthew Schaefer going first, Michael Misa going second, followed by Anton Frondell, Caleb Desnoyers, James Higgins, Porter Martone, and at 7, the Bruins going with Jake O'Brien from the Brantford Bulldogs, a guy who has been on several mock drafts here at the 7th overall pick. There's been a lot of chatter about Brady Martin maybe jumping up, but if he's on the board, Jake O'Brien's probably the guy. Fluto Shinzawa wrote the Bruins need skill. They need centers. O'Brien checks both boxes. Talent and hockey sense help make O'Brien an easy selection for the rebuilding franchise. Now, it's interesting at 8, Thomas Drance, who was on the podcast last summer, has Roger McQueen going 8th. And this guy is pretty high upside. And Drance wrote, the Kraken have exclusively drafted high upside centers in the top 10 through their brief existence. Matty Beniers, Shane Wright, Berkeley Catton. And while that might be an argument to diversify and look elsewhere, the Kraken are still searching for their first breakthrough elite contributor. And that's why Drance has them going back to the well and drafting McQueen, a 6'5" goal-scoring center who would be going an awful lot higher than 8th if not for the concerns stemming from a significant back injury that limited him to just 17 games this draft year. Assuming the medicals check out, which is a big if to weigh, Drance writes, McQueen is the best bet for the Kraken to emerge from the draft with a needle-moving star down the road. And that's the bet they should be trying to make again. Could be a very intriguing prospect for the Bruins to maybe go with a guy who has higher upside and who could be a kind of high risk, kind of high reward player. And maybe that's the kind of swing that the Bruins need to be making. Now, the Score, where I used to work for 5 years, their staff got together and did their mock draft a couple days ago, and they had a big surprise in the top 5, which very much benefited the Boston Bruins. No surprise, they had Schaefer, Misa going 1-2. They have Porter Martone going 3 to the Chicago Blackhawks, and then Brady Martin making a huge jump to number 4. He's a big riser, but 4th is still higher than most expect them to go, the Score staff wrote. Utah GM Bill Armstrong has never cared about public consensus. Took T. Ginla most earlier than most projected. They took Dmitry Simashev and Daniel Butt earlier than expected. So maybe Martin, physical blue-collar player with great hands, could become the perfect number 2 center behind Logan Cooley. They did take him out for dinner. There's even some rumors going around this morning that the Mammoth will make a huge offer for Brad Marchand as a free agent, and he could be a guy who could take a guy like Brady Martin under his wing. Score then had James Higgins taken 5th by the Predators, Caleb Denvoyer going 6th, which could land the Bruins Anton Frondell, which would be an unbelievable drop for them. They write the Bruins' disastrous season earned them a rare premium pick. Haven't drafted this high since Tyler Seguin went 2nd overall in 2010. Frondell's advanced two-way game would suit a rebuilding club or a retooled playoff hopeful, depending on which path Boston pursues. The shoot-first sender had 11 goals in Sweden's second pro tier, and he showcased his endurance by posting the Combine's best VO2 max, which is their aerobic fitness score. The Bruins would be thrilled if Anton Frondell were to drop to the 7th overall pick. So a lot of moving parts. Our boy Don Sweeney, or some people's boy Don Sweeney, has even floated the idea of trading that pick. It all gets underway in just a couple weeks. And very excited for that draft process. Of course, we will keep you on top of all the latest here on Locked On Boston Bruins. So please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so that you do not miss a thing. Check out the Locked On NHL Game Night podcast next. Every game, every night until a new Stanley Cup champion is crowned. A thrilling game last night where the Panthers were up 3-0. Oilers came back, took the lead. Panthers tied it late. And then Leon Draisaitl won things in overtime, which we loved to see. That's it for today's episode, my friends. I hope you have all had a great week and have a fun weekend on tap. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.